Hello and good afternoon. Welcome back to Keep Indiana Learning. My name is Brenny Coomer, and I'm really excited to be here today with my fellow Keep Indiana Learning innovation coaches, Tim Arnold and Sara Atkinson, as we continue our dual book study discussing AI in education. Today, we're talking about a few chapters 5 and 6 of Ethan Mollick's book, Co-Intelligence. And next time you catch up with us, we're going to be looking at the book AI for Educators. There's Tim. He always is ready, by Indiana author and educator Matt Miller. So during this book study, we're talking a lot about AI, teacher practical tools, thinking through AI in much a bigger, broader perspective. And I think Tim said it best before we started doing this live stream that these last few chapters we looked at for the reading and discussion today were very thought-provoking and pretty heavy in parts and really challenges your thinking. So with that being said, I'm going to do introductions and then we'll talk through this very thought-provoking series of pages that we read today. So as I said, I'm Brenny. I'm from Columbus, Indiana. I'm the Assistant Director of Educational Technology for Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation. I support EdTech, UDL, blended learning, a lot of different things. And before that, I was a social studies teacher at the middle school and high school level. And I'm also the president-elect for Indiana Connected Educators.
Hi, my name is Tim Arnold. I'm a district e-learning specialist with Richmond Community Schools. I spent 26 years as a 7 through 12 social studies educator. I'm an innovation coach with Keep Indiana Learning, an Indiana University Distinguished Jacobs Educator, and I serve as a member of the HEC board.
And my name is Sara Atkinson. I'm the Instructional Technology Coordinator for Duneland School Corporation. I'm also a Keep Indiana Learning innovation coach and a proud cyborg, which we'll learn more about later today.
Ooh, I love that you included that in your intro. Love it. All right. So I always like to kick off with kind of an opener question. And I had so many, honestly, that I was thinking of to kick us off today. And I clearly couldn't decide because on our notes, I also listed like 3. But I'm going to pick, I think, maybe the first one. In this series of pages this time, we talked a lot about AI as a creative partner and then AI as a coworker. And I'm just curious, when I know all of us have experience using AI tools, and those who are watching us live or catching up later, maybe some of the things that you've used it for, it's been really helpful. But what are some times when you've used AI or tasks that you've asked it to do where maybe it hasn't been the most helpful partner, or it's given kind of a bland response? I'll give an example. We were trying to have it come up with songs about a coworker for his birthday and put in some of his hobbies and stuff. And it was so, as the kids would say, so cringy, which kind of made it wonderful in one sense. But I think there's certain things that creativity wise, it kind of struggles with. I think it was trying to give us very like average, middle of the road responses. Not sure. Curious to see what you guys think if you've had similar experiences.
The only one I can think about is we were playing around with trying to get it to give us a bunch of great names for something. And so we were asking it things that were sort of nonsense things. Like, for instance, give us the top 10 best names you can come up with for a big and tall store for men 5'8" and under, something goofy like that. So I felt like we were gaming it a little bit, and some of them were okay. Most of them were not, but it wasn't really a serious task. So nobody was hurt.
I was hurt by mine personally. When Microsoft Designer first came out and they had that AI prompt that you could generate pictures with, I thought it would be super cute if I had it generate a bunch of pictures of me so that I could put them in my newsletters and they not be like actual photos. And I was deeply offended by some of the stuff that it created. I mean, some of it was really funny. Like I had extra noses and eyes and fingers and stuff. But then some of it, I was like, excuse me, that is not what I look like. But fortunately, it's gotten a lot better. And I don't go over there that much very often anymore. But it was interesting, to say the least.
I hadn't even thought of I was just thinking purely like chatbots with this prompt. I hadn't even considered the image piece, which certainly you see some unique things with AI image generators. We were making some promotions for Indiana Connected Educators Conference, and we had the idea of like having a bunch of hands show like hold up school supplies, and I was like, hold on a second, there's some weird things that happen with extremities with so that was a no right away. Well, that being said, though, AI can be creative and helpful in some ways, or at least sparking that creativity, which was, I think, part of the big focus in chapter 5, but also a discussion of things it kind of struggles with, as you can see from several of our examples and different scenarios. So I had a big quote I put down for chapter 5, and I think maybe 2 of you wrote it down as well, but we often mistake novelty for originality. And I just like want to keep that quote forever and kind of keep it in my frame of mind, because I think that's so true. And I think sometimes when we use these AI tools, maybe we're in a creative slump, or there's just so many other things and noise going on that we turn to it because we feel like we can't come up with something on our own. And that's when it's helpful. But a lot of the times the responses we get from AI, unless you're giving it very particular prompts, like the example that Tim gave, then it gives you responses and they're not necessarily super original. They're kind of bland, which I thought was interesting. And the example that he gave in the text about the AUT test to come up with a lot of items quickly, it comes up with a ton of ideas and lists of things, obviously much faster than what we can do as ourselves as humans, but not many of them are super original. And I don't know if you've done that with your teachers, but I had them do this activity after I read this section of the book. We were doing a workshop and I was like, all right, I want everyone in this room to partner up and you're going to list 20 to 30 things you can find in a classroom. And the teachers came up with very creative things, like wild things that teachers know would be in a classroom, like students, being goofy or doing TikTok dances, things like that. Like you'll have those in the classroom, but the AI bot didn't come up with those. So I think an important takeaway I had from this chapter is it can certainly help spark creativity, but it's not a good substitute for our own ideas and conversations and bouncing of ideas that we have off with our friends.
Yeah, I would say probably the AUT test that you mentioned. It was very interesting to find out that although AI can produce many more responses very quickly, much more so than a human, that the human responses were still the ones that were chosen more times than not over the AI responses. So I thought that was interesting. And then it kind of all boiled down to me, the idea that the book talked about the paradox of AI creativity. That phrase stuck with me. The very thing that causes the hallucinations or the errors, the unreliability on occasion, and occasionally can be something that we might label as dangerous, is the exact thing that makes it so useful when we're stuck or when we need a nudge to get rolling. So that paradox, I think, is really a major part of chapter 5.
I agree 100%, Tim. Sometimes it's what we need in order to get started with a task. I know the author gave the example of writing this book and writing a little bit and then having to stop, get up, walk around, come back, hope that an idea comes to him. But when you have AI, you can power through, because when you get to those, brain blocks, you can have another, I don't want to say person, because obviously it's not a person, but another tool to give you some ideas to get started. Something that really stood out to me on a similar note was the idea of frustrated creative energy, in that there's so many people around the world that have an urge to create and be creative, but maybe don't have the skill to produce some of the stuff that they want to produce, things like artwork and music and lyrics and poetry and other things. And AI gives them an outlet, a way to do that. So like you said, Tim, the thing that we've, criticized about AI can be a thing that is a huge asset in using it.
Agreed. I love both of what you all said. And I hadn't even thought of that too, that it is a creative outlet for people and gives them an avenue. And I went to a conference this fall where a local artist had been using AI to help him brainstorm concepts for his pieces. And he was writing children's books and he was using that to help him visualize different elements. And he was very open in saying that, English is my third language and I wanted the book to be in English, and I was struggling with writing and figuring out the words, and I would talk into ChatGPT and it would help me fine tune my words to where other people knew what I was trying to get across. So powerful example there of it being a helpful tool for that. It can be a creative partner. I think the section 2 about variance is key in brainstorming and creativity, that being that thought partner that's helpful for that too. Sometimes you have to get the really bad, corny jokes or song lyrics or things from AI to help you reinforce, like, okay, I definitely don't want that. I want this instead. It brings out the better ideas. I thought too, later on in chapter 5 and talking about creativity, there's a lot of discourse out there. And I think maybe all of us have had a fear at some point or another with AI and like, what does it mean for our future? What does it mean for jobs? And the author talking about how some of the people who were worried about AI replacing creative jobs, like you have to be skilled in that area to use it effectively, right? So talking about writers, how they're so good at prompting and editing and using their words to tell a story, and you have to use those skills when you use AI. So it's important that we understand that and don't think that it's just a replacement, because if you've gotten those outputs that aren't great, or you just paste in like a pretty general question, then you get a very general response back.
Yeah, I don't know if you had the warm heart moment, but when he talked about humanities majors and said, hey, these people can rule the world through AI prompting, I was like, yes, finally, yes, there's a future for us. And, it's people who are well-versed in culture, people who are well-versed in history or prose or editing or any of those things that are such a part of writing great prompts. There's a place for you for sure in this new world. This AI, this creative work, it's going to save us time. It's going to help us work faster. We're going to end up with higher quality as long as we keep the human element in it. It can be a part of reducing inequalities. But again, that's based on the human element that's a part of it. So that part was exciting. I know there were some other things that gave us pause, but I felt good after reading that portion.
Yeah, it was really cool to read about how you can connect these concerns about AI to the human element. And something that was brought up in the book was the idea of pushing the AI from an average answer to a high variance, weird answer, and what that takes. That's like the highest level of using AI to brainstorm. And if you really want to be able to do that well, you have to have deep knowledge about whatever your subject area, your content area is. So it's comforting to hear that even though AI is going to replace some of the tasks that we've done in the past and we've owned and felt comfortable in the past, but at the same time, there's a place and a value for all of that background knowledge and cultural knowledge and humanities knowledge. So it's comforting to hear from an expert that will still find a lot of value in those things. It's just, it may look different than it's looked in the past. And we do have to give up some of the control over what is doing some of the work for us. So it's kind of a balancing act when you think about it.
Yeah, it just underscores really the common message throughout the book that it's so important to still have the human in the loop, right? And what you do as the human in the loop and what decisions you make and what you use it for is going to be even more important moving forward as AI advances and changes and gets better at things that maybe it's not so great at right now. Kind of the last question I want to ask you too before we move on to talking more about chapter 6. I was curious. So later, very last pages of chapter 5, he talks about like the analogy of the AI being a button and it being tempted to press the button for all different types of tasks and activities. And what does that mean for things that were the time spent doing it and the thoughtfulness in the time that's spent doing that? What does that mean? And having AI write our first draft, I was curious to know both of your thoughts on that.
For me, the button idea, I think it's an important thing that we need to think and talk about and discuss with our students. I don't have any problem using AI for tasks that I think are repetitive and not necessarily creative. They can have them. That's, to me, one of the strengths. It's going to get all of us closer to doing the meaningful work faster. So in that regard, I don't really have too many problems with the button, depending on what we're choosing to use it for. I'm a firm believer in first draft by the human. I want to have students do something first and then get that thought partner through AI to have them rethink their work. To me, it would be a ticket. If we're a magic school, if you're going to get entry into the student room with the feedback tool, then you've got to have something to show me first before I'm going to allow you entry into the room. That's kind of how I've envisioned it.
I've seen some of the button idea in play this year. It's been really interesting as different software companies that my district subscribes to has announced their updates for the next school year and how many of them have AI embedded in them. We have a textbook adoption going on right now, and every company is advertising having, an AI powered grading tool or AI powered lesson planning tool. So this button idea is just going to play more and more of a role. And I think the author said it really well in that we're going to have to reconstruct meaning in the value of some of the tasks and work that we've done and some of the products that we've created. They gave an example of a recommendation letter and how previously, if a teacher or a coworker was willing to sit down and take the time to really think through a good quality recommendation letter, when you handed that over to the college or the employer, it had value because the people receiving it knew that someone took a lot of time and thought and did that for you. And now that we're going to have these tools at our disposal that can do these things quickly, maybe this idea of like time consumption isn't going to hold as much value anymore. And even like high quality product may not have as much value anymore. So honestly, I can't wrap my head around it yet and what that is going to look like, especially in the world of K-12, because we do as teachers place so much value in the amount of time and effort students spend on something. So honestly, I can't give you an idea of where I'm thinking we're headed here, because I think this idea of having to reconstruct meaning is going to happen and play out in K-12 as well.
Very well said. And part of the reason why I asked you to versus answer it myself in my question is because I feel the exact same way. The bit about the recommendation letter really stuck with me. And I had to like go and walk and think through that, because I know when I got those letters as a student, like it meant a lot to me that the teachers spent that much time on it. And I know if I write those for my students right now, like I want it to be me, I want it to, it's very challenging to think through some of those pieces, and it's definitely reconstructing meaning, like you said. And I love the author's way of posing that question, because I don't think any of us have a clear answer of what that means right now. And it's just going to continue to change over time. So on that note, chapter 6, which really shifted a little bit, some similar themes, but AI as a coworker. And I think Tim kind of talked about this a little bit in saying that there's certain things that you delegate task to, and I loved the author talking about like task for me, task for AI. I'm curious if you all kind of have like a similar mindset when you approach different tasks, like what degree of AI use is okay, what you want it to do on its own, and whatnot. I know Sara, you already mentioned the cyborg piece as well.
Yeah, I really, that whole falling asleep at the wheel kind of warning that we were given there, the good AI versus lower quality AI versus no AI. I think that's an important conversation we all have to consider. I know that AI is still new enough for me, and I use it a lot, but it's still new enough for me that there are times that I take off on a task and I say, hey, wait a minute, there's AI. And I hope I never lose that, because I again, just like the student work, I want to have some sort of an idea down for the task I'm trying to complete ahead of time before I dump it in there and get some help from a thought partner. So you don't want to become reticent at just always starting there or always going there, because it's not going to be great for everything that we have to do. Great as a thought partner, but better with human connection.
Yeah, I appreciated the breakdown that the author provided on the concept of what's called a just me task, in that there's kind of a spectrum to that coexistence between AI and humans, and AI use ranges anywhere from tasks that are completely left to AI and automated that way, which are less commonplace right now, but are becoming more and more commonplace as they become more reliable, up to delegated tasks where we trust the AI to produce something, but we check on it. And then tasks that as humans, we've remained in control of and ownership of, for various reasons, like ethical reasons, for example, concern about copyright and legal implications. So I think that as humans become more and more comfortable with AI and what it does, those things will change. And with the change in quality that AI is able to produce, the lines are going to continue to blur and morph and change. But like you said, Tim, it's important that we stay really metacognitive about AI and how we interact with it, because there is danger to falling asleep at the wheel. It doesn't just, put us at risk of risking our reputations by producing something that's inaccurate, or endangering our jobs or grades, but it also kind of puts us at danger in losing the capability to be able to think critically. And in the previous chapter, there was a good section about that, the actual dangers in like over relying on AI. So it's really cool in that things are going to continue to change and grow, but we've got to stay on top of it, and we have to be reflective. And we have to teach our kids how to be reflective too, because gosh, this is going to be their adult life. When you think about it, their whole adult life is going to be touched by AI in some way.
Agreed. And that's what I was just about to say, that this just is why it's so important that we have these conversations and then are preparing for these conversations with our students, because AI is infused everywhere. I mean, it's being infused into all of the curriculum tools and things like that. And we know it's on social media, it's everywhere. So it's so important for students to know what AI is, how it works, but then also just its shortcomings too. And when I was looking through the tasks for me, tasks for AI, delegating, and automating tasks, I was trying to think, at least in my mind, and thinking through AI, and I know there's lots of different types. I don't know if I fully automate anything that I do to where it's just AI's doing it for me. And I was thinking of like, large language models versus other pieces like spam filters that look for keywords and things like that. But maybe it's my distrust of AI to a degree where I don't fully let it do everything for me, because I've seen things that it doesn't do well, or I just know that it's so important to have the human in the loop, and I'm not quite there yet. So I would have loved for the author to give a few more examples of what that could be. And maybe it's more in field outside of K-12 education, but I found that part to be particularly interesting. And with that being said, the discussion of the shadow AI use I thought was fascinating too, where there's these companies that are saying that they don't want staff to use AI, but people are so tempted to use it and know that it can make them more efficient in certain areas and help them, that they, bring it on a personal device and they're using it. And it's something that they're hiding from their coworkers, which I thought was wild, because it's kind of like when our students back in the day when texting wasn't allowed and we would learn to text behind our backs and things like that. Like, obviously this is a much more advanced technology tool, but I wonder how much of the shadow AI use is happening in classrooms where students want to bring it in or don't know what appropriate or expectations are in their classroom for its use, so they still bring it into the classroom anyway.
Yeah, agreed. I think those are all really good things to think about. And as you saw in my notes, as a former 7th grade social studies teacher, I just kept coming back to those 3 Hindu deities that I used to get to teach about: Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. AI has the ability to do all of those. And so I'm not saying we shouldn't use it. I think we should use it. We should use it with the human in the loop, but we should be aware of its capabilities.
Yeah. I don't know, guys. It's complicated in that it's weird, because there's a lot of value and people are bringing a lot of value to the workplace because they're being brave and they're using this stuff. But at the same time, there's that whole security side of things, and not just data security, but also like intellectual property security. And at the same time, when we think about the kids, we want them to learn these skills, but at the same time, we want to be able to control what they're being exposed to. But then we have to like be super realistic about what they're actually doing. And I know in my specific role, I've been having these conversations for the last year with building principals and with teachers about AI. And there's a lot of people who still think that it's not being used. If we block it, it's not being used. And the honest truth is it's being used, and they've been using it for a while now. And are we going to chastise this and punish this, or are we going to embrace it? And I remember back when we talked a lot about social media and digital citizenship back in the day, and the idea of we have to teach them we have to let them have exposure to it and teach them how to use it, or else when they do have the freedom to use these things, they're going to use it irresponsibly. So I'm still in a place of discomfort around all this stuff, but at the same time, I'm excited that people want to use these tools and they want to make their jobs easier and make their schoolwork easier, because in the chapter, it was really good about talking about work in general and how menial tasks and time-consuming tasks kind of make people unhappy. And we want to empower students to use technology for good. And this is a really good example of that. So I'm in conflict about all that. And I know that the teachers are feeling it, the principals are feeling it. So we're just kind of in this place of discomfort. But then at the same time, I remember back in the day when one-to-one computing just kind of rolled around and the idea of Wikipedia popped up and all the teachers freaked out. I remember I was in high school, all the teachers freaked out because the kids started getting their info from Wikipedia, and they did I think everybody did that lesson where they went in and changed like Abraham Lincoln's page, and oh my gosh, you can put anything on there. So I feel like history is repeating itself, which, is a thing in technology. But yeah, I feel like I'm kind of not bringing a lot to this book study because there's a lot of discomfort and like gray area here, but I think we have to be honest about it and call it out. So that's where I am.
I think what you're bringing is perfect because we're all there. We're all in that state of cognitive dissonance, right? That's where we are.
Yes.
And if we're not, that would worry me more.
Yes.
Because if we're just saying, yeah, come on, let's go. I think we got to consider all these things. So yeah, don't feel that way at all. We're all there.
Now, I feel like you have a really good way of capturing some of the feelings that I have about this and articulating them very well and asking the tough questions, which has been good. I think when on our earlier episodes of this book study, we had some mic drop quotes, and then Tim was like, we should put those on t-shirts. I feel like some of the things that you have said today, Sara, need to be like bumper stickers or very quotes to live by when thinking about AI, just because they're very deep and they're thought-provoking. And these two chapters that we read are uncomfy and they're complicated because they challenge our thinking and just what we know about the world and teaching and learning and our surroundings. And I think being willing to be troubled by those questions is so important because it's tricky. So I know, Sara, you wrote this down in your section too, but one of the last pieces of this chapter I love too, and I think ties into what you had just been saying, is that we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. So it'll just be really interesting to see where we go and where we end up on this AI journey, because no one really knows. And we've had other tools before where we've had crazy things happen and it transformed education. But I do agree that this one is different in a way, and what it can do and what it's capable of. Any lasting thoughts or other inspirational quotes before I wrap us up?
I don't think so. I'm happy to be in this space with you all and anybody that's watching. So if you have these same questions, feel free to reach out to us because we're all navigating this together for sure.
I'm just thinking about bumper stickers now, and we should start a store. This would be awesome. But no, I'm with Tim. I'm with you, Brenny. It's comforting to know that there's a professional community and that we're able to do this stuff online. and connect with other educators around the state and beyond. Because through all this AI stuff, we've kind of had to get in there and dig in together. And it's been a little while, I don't want to say the word, but I'll say it. Back when COVID rolled around and we had to lean on each other that time, we're kind of doing it again. So it's like we're bringing the band back together. I love it. So uncomfort, discomfort, yes. But at the same time, it's awesome. All the educators around the state and beyond that are collaborating and sharing ideas on this stuff.
Agreed. And I also think we should open a store with some of the quotes and inspirational things that we've had in these conversations. So thank you two for such great conversation today. I really enjoyed it, as I do every time. I feel like I learn so much and have so many more thoughts to think through after we talk. And thank you all for joining us today, whether you're joining live or after the fact. We'd love to know what you think. Just some of the many questions that we pondered today. Some additional ones are, how do you feel about AI as a coworker, as a creative partner? What are some ways that you've used AI, and what tasks do you delegate, automate, or keep an eye on, or just keep to yourself? And we're curious to know about that. So let us know your responses. Let us know what you think. We have many more discussions of chapters of this book, as well as AI for Educators by Matt Miller. One of those is coming out pretty soon. Thank you, Tim. That's the next one we're chatting about. And we'll be looking at another fantastic AI discussion. So thank you all so much for joining. And we hope you have a really good rest of your day.